Hi there, welcome to my podcast. This is Sheelaa Bajaj, and this is my podcast where we talk about your life, we talk about different aspects of our journey as a human being. And today we're going to talk about this is actually a very special episode number 25, and we're going to talk about a very important topic, and that is rejection, because this topic has been requested by a lot of people. So we're going to dive into rejection. What is rejection? How does one deal with rejection? Rejection comes in many different forms and shapes and sizes, and everyone deals with rejection in different ways. So the first aspect of rejection that one needs to understand is that people have judgments about certain attributes, about looks, about money. People have certain boxes in their life, accomplishments, education. We all have these little compartments in our life where we allow people. For example, if you're very, very highly educated, it's only like you want to be friends with people who are highly educated. If you're very successful and have lots and lots of money, you want to have friends who have similar money. So we have these guidelines on who we want to be friends with, whom we'd like to associate with. And you've got to understand this is how this world works. This is how reality works. This has nothing to do with who you are as a person. Reality, people, and this world functions in this way. If you understand that, you'll be a very happy person, because this is the modus operandi of how people choose their friends, their social life, and just because you don't fit into that category, they don't receive you. And really, whose loss is that? It's their loss. I've seen people function from boxes in all aspects of their life, from friendships to relationships. It's almost like there is a slab for everything, there's a box for everything, there's a category for everything. Earlier, our parents' generation had the caste system, and then people got married according to the caste system. Those were different boxes. And now we have different other boxes. Looks is a different box. People want to get into a relationship with someone who looks a certain way. It's almost like there's no importance given to the person. People end up finding someone who they connect with based on how attracted they are to that person. And then later they realize compatibility isn't there, understanding isn't there. It's almost like we human beings function on some kind of an algorithm. I have a certain financial status, and I'm only going to have friends or a relationship of someone of the similar. The looks need to match, intellect needs to match. There is this whole checklist. Now, what happens when the superficial categories don't add up? For example, let's say you meet a friend who's not in the same financial status as you. Let's say you meet a friend who comes from a different background as you. You have great compatibility, great understanding, but do you even give that friendship or relationship or association a chance? No, you don't. And a lot of times people will sometimes give it a chance, but because of certain characteristics, these superficial characteristics, most times superficial characteristics are the reason why people end up rejecting other people, not the deep characteristics. So remember, the rejection has nothing to do with you as a person. Rejection has everything to do with that person and their superficial criteria of how they want people in their life, or how they want, a friendship or a relationship to pan out. For example, people will marry someone only if that person is single, never been married before, don't have children. It was something that I faced when I was a single parent, is that I ended up meeting people who didn't want to date me because I was a single mom. And for a long time, I thought that was a negative, or I was being rejected, and I felt like, oh, that's a wrongness in me. Until at some point I realized that was the best filter I had. All the shallow people in my life were strained out, were sifted out and sieved out of my life with this beautiful identity of mine that I was divorced and with a kid, because all the weirdos and all the shallow people were automatically moved out of my life, out of my universe, literally. So they would make friends with me, or they would associate themselves with me, but there was this wall of, I don't want to get into a relationship, or I don't want to commit because you have this tag. So really, lots of people have different kinds of tags. You could be divorced, you could be a different community, you could be something, and a lot of times people will categorize you and, not get into a relationship with you or not become friends with you because you belong to a certain category. Similarly, you end up getting friends who want you for a certain reason, let's say because of your fame, because of your your influence, your money, or all of that. And you automatically know that these people are you for some reason, for a purpose. They hang around you to gain something from you. So rejection in a way has nothing to do with anything that you are, but most times the moment we get rejected, the first thing we make it is about ourselves. We sort of go within and we make it look like we are unloved, we are not wanted, we are no good. We always end up, badgering ourselves for this rejection and feeling worse about ourselves. But really, it has nothing to do with ourselves. It has everything to do with that person and how shallow they are. But do we ever even think that way? Never. Because we're always, whenever something doesn't work out, whenever someone does something to us, the first thing we want to do is blame ourselves. And that's what a whole species of human beings will do, is to blame themselves. How often do we look at things on the outside and say, hey, you know what, it could be that other person's reality. When people actually judge you for being something, it has nothing to do with you. That's their reality. That's where they come from. Rejection is very, very similar to that. That's the eyeglass or the filter they look at life through. So I'm going to invite every one of you to start looking at all the places in your life that you were rejected. For a job, you were rejected for friendship, you were rejected in a relationship, you were rejected in a community, maybe in, when you went down to play with your friends, maybe in a school group because you were not cool enough. Look at all those instances and jot down each one of those instances. And trust me, rejection started somewhere in the childhood. Rejection always starts in the childhood. And I want you to go back to all those times when you're 3 years old, when you were 5 years old. Like, I still remember an aunt who ended up coming and telling me that, she was actually praising my sister. And I remember, I was maybe 4 or 3 or 5 years old. I can't even remember how old I was. I was really, really tiny. And, she was praising the way my sister was growing up to look. And I was so thrilled and super, happy about listening to all of that from a distance. And she was praising how my sister looked to my mom. And then she comes up to me 5 minutes later and she laughs at me and says, "What happened to you?" And that was the first day I felt rejected for being ugly. And that was the first day I got implanted with the idea that I was ugly. And all my life, I always had people come and tell me that I was ugly. I always had rejection from friends, from people, because I always ended up comparing myself to the way my sister looked. And there was always this inferiority complex that I built, that I was ugly. So when did the first rejection start for you? When was the first time someone said you were stupid, you were silly, you were something? When did someone label you as something that really was brutal to you? And I want you to go back and really look at that incident and see, do you think that was the truth? I really want the adult you now to go back to that childhood, stand there, listen to that statement, close your eyes if you have to, and go back to that incident and see, was that the truth? Or was that person's perspective? Was it that person's reality that they just looked at the world through? Was it that person's judgment? Were they just a bully to kind of view you as being silly, stupid, brainless, an idiot, whatever they called you? And really, how important did you make that person by buying their truth and listening to it and, allowing that to run your life? So rejection starts at a very, very young age. It's not about where you feel rejected today. It started way, way, way back. And if you want to heal rejection, you have to go back to each one of those incidences, write it down. The adult you has to visit that memory, go stand there and look at what did that person say. And if it's still incomplete for you, I want you to actually get some sort of healing for that. You could try getting healed through Bach flower therapy. You can try getting healed through fifth dimensional healing that I do. You could get healed through some sort of meditational therapy that I also do. And go back to that incident, and that energy pattern that got constructed there has to be destroyed. Because every sort of rejection or every form of abuse goes and creates some kind of an energy disturbance, like a knot. It's like it creates like a pattern there, and it sticks to you. Sometimes when the adult you goes there, confronts a situation and said, oh my god, this is such a crock of crap, sometimes those patterns just break, because the only person who can destroy that energy pattern is you. No one else can destroy that energy pattern until you are willing to let go of it. So I'm going to invite each one of you to go back, revisit those rejection memories, and I want you to sort of go and sort it out. And I also want each one of you to function from a space of, do you really think that rejection, after what I spoke, after the entire episode that I've discussed rejection, do you really think rejection has anything to do with you? It has to do with the superficialness, the shallowness, and the criteria, the check boxes in that person's reality. How shallow was that person to sort of, you didn't match up to their criteria, you didn't match up to their standards, and hence you got rejected. Sometimes it's also just a power game. Sometimes it's like a relationship, and then in the end, the person who actually breaks up in the end is the person who gets the power, and the other person gets rejected. The same pain that you go through, I've told this to so many couples, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it's something that, I've experienced myself in the past, is that if you went back, let's say the relationship got restored at some point, you were hurting like crazy, you were going through 6 months of pain, and then finally you got back together. After that, you came to a point where you rejected that person or you dumped that person. Okay, it's taken as rejection. Because you decided it, you don't feel pathetic about it anymore. So really, it may not be about pain at all. If you're facing pain and hurt because of feeling rejected by your lover, because they ended the relationship, this has nothing to do with rejection, darling. It has everything to do with a mind game, with power. That person decided that for you, which is why you feel miserable. If you had taken the call to end the relationship, you wouldn't be feeling so miserable. So how do you get your power back? It's a very tricky question. If you're hurting from a relationship and you want to get the power back, it's also like, a job. I'm not going to only say this about relationship, but it's about friendship. The person who bangs the phone down, okay, nowadays we can't even bang the phone down, but the person who decides to end some transaction is the one who has the power. So I'm just going to say that it may sound very silly and childish, but if you know something's going awry and you feel that you're the type who's going to fall apart after you being rejected or the other person taking the call, take the call first to walk out or end it. Take power in your own hands and end it. Otherwise, restore whatever has gone wrong and then try to end it after that. I know it sounds extremely absurd, but sometimes taking power in your own hands helps. Sometimes also by writing to that person and saying, you know what, this is what I was going through, but I realize it's the best, that this was really toxic for me and I choose to let go of this because, this was not contributive to my life. Sometimes by telling the person, I am letting you go because your presence or your energy doesn't work for me anymore, also gives you your power back. You don't have to restore the relationship by also sending them a message. I know it sounds also very childish, but remember all the times that someone blocked you on Instagram, on Facebook, on your social media, on phone. When someone doesn't reply to you, when someone doesn't, reply to any message, you feel rejected because it's a power game, it's a mind game. So I'm just going to say one thing, that, if someone's doing that to you, send them a message of closure telling them, I know that this is not happening and you're not good for me. I'm putting an end to this. You'll sort of feel better about it. Your mind sort of feels better. Try it out. If there are any other aspects of rejection that you haven't been able to deal with, I'll be happy to hear from you. And I want each one of you, I know everyone listens to the podcast. There are thousands of people who write to me, but I only have a few reviews on my podcast. So I'm going to invite each one of you and ask each one of you and invite each one of you, if this podcast made any difference to you, even a 1%, please write a detailed review. I would really want to hear from each one of you. Write to me on sheelaa@sheelaa.com, or I would love to hear you, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is @SheelaaMBajaj. That's Sheelaa with a double A. And I would love to hear from each one of you. You can also follow me on Facebook, Sheelaa M. Bajaj. That's where you can reach me. And, so let's stay connected. I do a ton of videos on Facebook and Instagram. And I would love to coach each one of you into you being a more phenomenal version of you. So share this podcast if it helped you at all on your LinkedIn, on all your social media, and let's spread consciousness in a bigger way. Thank you for listening to me. And in my next episode, I'm going to talk about something more to take you towards a more phenomenal you. This is Sheelaa Bajaj signing off, and I love doing this podcast for you.